The second point is less is more. This is not just for Chinese learners, but also for myself as a tutor. So when you learn a language, especially at the beginning, when we do it, we tend to look at the whole picture, which can be really overwhelming. Like in Chinese, we say 听说读写. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And of course, the pronunciation comes first, and then all the grammar points and everything. So when we do something, what frightens us the most is always the unknown things. So when we learn a language at the beginning, it can be super frightening because we know nothing about it. And there's no clue. We don't know what we can do, like step by step. So I think it's really important to lower our expectations. So stop looking at the whole picture. Instead, focus more on the concrete steps. If you learn two more words for today, it will be a big achievement. Of course, the basic sounds like pronunciation is the most important thing at the beginning. But after you grasp the basic sounds, you're able to pronounce almost anything you see. At this point, you don't need to learn everything at the same time. And also, there are so many materials available. And also, it's more important to focus on one thing and make the most of it. Like for me, right now, when I learn French, I'm not paying too much attention to grammar points. Instead, I focus more on the concrete sentences and how they're used and how I can use them with the real people. And it's okay to make mistakes because everybody does. But if you can take the initiative and open up, you will see the progress. And this whole concept, less is more, also applies to the time we spend on this language. If you learn it as a beginner, and at the beginning, as I just talked about the motivation thing, of course, we're all motivated to learn it. And there are always new things, fascinating stuff. And I've seen people who have spent like 2-3 hours per day on language learning, and they go over 100, 200 Anki flashcards. But after several months, they gave up. I'm not talking about everyone, like some people. For those students who have to study hard to pass their exams and get a degree, of course, they have to. But for those who just do it for interests, like not specific goals, I don't suggest that you spend too much time on your Chinese. If it's kind of hard for you to be consistent, because at the beginning, if you learn too many things, and then it's hard for you to digest. For example, 100 Anki decks, 100 Anki flashcards can contain so many words, sentences, and if you learn so many things at the same time and you don't know how to use them, and one day when you talk to people, you realize that, oh, I have learned so many things, but why is it so hard for me to open up my mouth and to talk? So at this point, you might get overwhelmed, and then it's likely for you to give up. So I think it's better to make yourself relaxed and be consistent, because like 3 hours a day for Chinese learning, and then you do this for, let's say, 1 month and then quit, doesn't work better than, I say, 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, and you keep doing it for a year. Because for language learning, especially at the beginning, it's hard to see quick progress. So yeah, less is more really matters. And then why did I say this sentence also works for me as a tutor? Because I have made some typical mistakes when I started tutoring, because at that time I didn't receive any proper education for tutoring, and I didn't study the theories about Chinese tutoring. I studied English back then. I was really good at doing language exchanges, but actually tutoring was a completely different thing. When I tutored my first student when I was in college, he is American. I taught him after he knew just some basics about pinyin and nothing else. At that time, I always wanted him to learn more things in class, but it was hard for him to digest everything, and I didn't realize that until a while later, because at that time I couldn't relate to him as a beginner. I studied English. Of course, I was good at doing language exchanges, but for tutoring and guiding someone who was learning a language from scratch, I did it in the wrong way. And I could feel that even though he said yes the whole time, like he understood everything, but actually he didn't. I could feel like his eyes were glazing over, and that was too overwhelming for him. And after I learned more about tutoring, and I also prepared for the certification for Chinese tutors, I finally realized how ridiculous I was at that time. So for teachers, it's also very important to focus more on the students and how they feel, how good they can handle everything we teach. So, and then I started reducing things in class. I learned to be more flexible, because when I prepare for things, the materials can contain so many words, grammar points. But when I teach the real students, they can probably only learn several words from it in one lesson. But it's okay, because it's a long process. And what matters more is that they can really use what they have learned. They can really understand it instead of just knowing the meaning, like have a very superficial impression. Less is more also means focusing on the important parts, like what really interests the student, not just things on the textbooks. Like I also learned to read people. Like young students always tend to talk about entertainments, online slangs, or like high technology. And while old people, like in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, they tend to talk about their kids. Like whenever I make examples about their kids, their pets, they always they're always super engaged, and it's easier for them to learn. So right now when I teach, I turn things on the textbooks into what's relatable to the students. And this is why a lot of people, they have been working really hard on textbooks and different materials, and they have accumulated so much vocabulary, but when they talk with the real people, they just can't open up, or they only have superficial impressions of what they have learned. And I think this is because they didn't learn it in an active way. It was always passive learning, passive input, but there's not actual output. So it's important to turn something you have learned into something related to you. Like when you see an example of example on the textbook, you try to make you can copy and paste the same pattern and make a version of your own. And this is what I talked about previously in my French learning. Anyways, it's okay to be slow. And what matters more is you keep being consistent. You show up the whole time, and try to make everything easier for you, even if it's not perfect, even if there are mistakes. One day you will see that your hard work is paid off.